Bismillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Lockdown Library. I'm Asim Qureshi, Research Director of Cage, and inshallah, as part of my ongoing series of reflections on books for Ramadan, inshallah today I'm going to start, in terms of my first book selection, with, of course, the Qur'an. So it wasn't really appropriate for me to start with anything else, I felt. And the Quran, as many of you know and are fully familiar with, is so central to our Ramadan. It always feels like it's impossible to have a Ramadan without some kind of, formal, informal, spiritual, isolated connection with this amazingly miraculous book. It's the only way of really describing it. So, inshallah, I'm just going to share today some of my practices during Ramadan with the Quran, in the hope that maybe there might be something beneficial for somebody out there who doesn't have maybe a process by which they engage with the text in different ways. And even myself, I'm hoping to benefit from you all as well. So, like last time, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section. It'll be great to know what your own processes are. Maybe, inshallah, you can all benefit me in some way. But I have my own way of engaging with it that, inshallah, I hope will be of some benefit to some of you. So coming back to the actual text version that I use, I have this one here, which is a Qatari version of the Quran that was printed there. And the reason I use this large one here, for a start, it's because I like the size of the text and the way that it's laid out. But also because this copy was gifted to me by a very, very, very dear friend. His name is Samuel Hajj. He is a former Guantanamo Bay detainee. He is the head of the Human Rights and Civil Liberties Department at Al Jazeera, and he actually has a book of his own, which I would definitely recommend people getting. It's called Qissati, which means my story, and it's about his time in Guantanamo. So, please do pick it up. There's Samuel Hajj at the bottom. Obviously, this is the Arabic version, but Al Jazeera have translated the whole book. In fact, a friend of mine translated it for them, and it's available for free on their website. So I would encourage all of you to support Sammy's work by downloading the translation and reading about his story. I mean, he's really, subhanAllah, he's a very miraculous individual himself. His story is wonderful, and just his generosity of spirit is really something quite remarkable. Yeah, so please, do learn more about Sammy's story, and I think you'll come to love him as I do, inshallah. So going back to my process with the Quran. So ultimately, of course, everybody has their own relationship, and everybody in the month are trying to seek different types of reward. They're trying to fulfill what they feel is, their way of really connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the course of the month. For me, reading the Quran is, like I mentioned in the last episode, it's a matter of tadabbur. For me, I'm really trying as much as possible to engage with what the Quran means to me as something that is a lived reality, as something that has significance in my life. And so that is always my aim when I start the month, and it's what I try and carry through right till the end. And because of that, it means that actually I probably go a lot slower than most people do when they engage with the text. For them, they might want to read the Quran many, many, many times over, finish it, multiple khatms. And of course, that's something very, very noble to do. And I definitely admire people who make the effort to do that. I think for me, it is much more about, okay, how do I how do I derive meaning from this gift as a book of guidance that's been given to us, and how do I draw from it something that makes me better as not just a Muslim, but also as a human being. So the way I go about it is really it's a simultaneous process of reading the English with the Arabic. And how I go about that is first I have the English language version, which, as you can see, is quite well thumbed through. Here's the hardback edition, which similarly is quite well thumbed through as well. This is the translation by Professor Muhammad Abdul Halim, who's a professor at SOAS. Many of you will know him, be familiar with his work. He's made a huge contribution to this deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and reward him for everything that he's done. But there are other versions as well. So I also have Tariq Khalidi's translation as well. Again, which is it's a nice translation. I like it a lot. And I think the reason why I like these versions of the translation of the meaning of the Quran is because of the way that they have been compiled. So the prose of the Quran read like an English paragraph, rather than, say, for example, each verse being separated. Personally, I find that easier to read. I think that's probably a large part due to my own preference of reading large amounts of material. I like to read it as a text that flows. And I think that both of these versions, they very much do that for me. I personally prefer the Muhammad Abdul Halim version, which is the Oxford World Classics version, rather than the Tariq Khalidi, which is the Penguin Classics version. I just feel like it flows a little bit nicer, and I just like the translation a lot more too. And yeah, I have multiple copies of it. Here's another one, actually. This was given to me by actually some friends of ours. It was a copy of my mentor, Dr. Charlotte Oldman, who, subhanallah, within the last year of her life, became Muslim. She taught me most of everything that I know about investigation work, and subhanallah, I do recommend you Google her and about her story. The obituaries were done in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Just an incredible human being. So it feels very, very personal to me to have kind of some of her annotations inside this book that I'm able to hold on to. Yeah, and take benefit from. Inshallah, and have the fact that I have that copy. Maybe inshallah there'll be some kind of sadaqah jari in that for her. So what are the tabs about? Let me go back to this version. So usually what happens for me, and I've got a few more versions of this book as well, is sometimes, and this doesn't necessarily happen every time, a theme within the Quran or the world itself will open up to me for some reason during the month, or even like right really from the beginning of the month. There'll be something that I'm thinking about, something that I'm struggling with, something that's not making sense in my life, something that I'm looking for, something I'm looking clarity on. And then what I'll do is that as I'm reading the Quran, I will almost like look for the answers and for the meaning for that quandary that I have in my life throughout the text. So often the tabs in each version of the text, they just represent the material that was helping me to think that issue through. So this version in particular is from a number of years ago. I was just trying to reflect on the idea of what oppression, what dhulm means in the Quran, what iniquity means. And the text opens itself up quite a lot when you go looking for answers to the questions that you have. And I think that's important because sometimes I think that we only engage with the text in a way that is too general. So it's just like, okay, what does this mean? What does the ayah mean? Rather than engaging with the text as a specific part of questioning yourself. about taking account of who you are and what's important to you and what you're trying to achieve in life. So Alhamdulillah, I have been blessed with the opportunity to go through this process. It really opened the Quran up for me in really wonderful ways. I hope that some of you will try this technique in this Ramadan. And if you do, and if you try and go through the whole month in this way, then do write to me and let me know, inshallah. I'd like to know if this was something that was useful for you in some way. But the way that I go about specifically the actual reading itself is I do take one juz a day, so the 30 divided by the course over the course of the 30 days, the 30 chapters or parts, should I say. Usually I finish before the end, so it's a little bit more than one a day because obviously sometimes we might have a Ramadan month that finishes in 29, but very purposefully I decide to go a juz a day in my own private reading in this way. Because and the reason why it's so slow is specifically because what I'm doing is if you look at the text. So here's an example. This is from Surah Baqarah, ayah 47. The the text is written as a paragraph. So there's multiple ayat relating to the subject, a single subject matter. And so I read the English first. And if you're like me and you're able to read the Quran and to understand its meaning for the most part, but get lost, especially with some of the more technical language and high language, and your Arabic isn't necessarily strong enough to take on the deeper meanings of the Quran, then I think you'll benefit from this method as well. So I read the paragraph or the ayat that are grouped together, almost like a subject matter within the paragraph. And I read them so I get the flow of what the ayat are saying. And specifically, then I have signpostings for words and phrases and what the ayat mean, so that when I read the Arabic, I have a much more connected sense of what the Arabic means. So I know, alhamdulillah, I can follow the Arabic to a decent extent, but what this allows me to do is then to really think about the Arabic as I'm reading it. So alhamdulillah, that's basically my process. That's how I go through the Quran itself on a daily basis. I do like to use this as well. It's a bit expensive, but it's actually this version was gifted to me by somebody. May Allah bless them. But it's a book that I really, if you can afford it, or if you can find the PDF that somebody can share with you from somewhere, it's the HDO Dictionary of Quranic Usage by, again, Professor Mohammed Abdul Halim, but also with Saeed Badawi. Sorry, let me just stick with this for a little while. This book is amazing, subhanAllah. It has every single word that appears in the Quran, so you can find it by the word itself. Let's take an example. Okay, this was very random, so don't accuse me of anything. But I opened up on haraba, right? Oops, did the wrong side. Okay, haraba, and immediately it tells you, where this word is located. It is different forms where it's located in the Quran, so it tells you exactly where the ayat are. But it also tells you what the different types of declensions it has as well. So what are the different forms that this root word appears in? And so you get a much wider sense for certain words that you might be looking at, thinking about. You get a sense for how they're used in different ways throughout the whole of the text of the Quran as well. So I really enjoy going through this book, this reference book, when I'm reading through the Quran, and it's always amazing to me how much I actually end up using it. because it's such a wonderful resource for anybody who's really trying to think about what does this text mean? What is it doing for me as a person? And so the final thing that I want to talk about is kind of helping you in some way to engage with the text you know in a sense that's more meaningful. So there are many tafsir out there, especially translations. People will be very familiar with Ibn Kathir's tafsir of the Qur'an. And obviously, those are very, very good resources to engage with. A personal favorite of mine, and I do like to recommend it, is Sayyid Qutb's Fi Dhilal al-Quran, or In the Shade of the Quran. It's an entire series. The version I have in front of me right now is volume 15. So the surah is 40 to 47. It covers. As you can see, it's something that I do engage with in a more meaningful way. And the reason why I like Sayyid Qutb is because even if you don't agree with everything that he has to say, he has a wonderful way of engaging with the Quran that brings the Quran's relevance into the real world. So even if you don't necessarily think that he's completely accurate in every single thing that he said, what you do get is a sense of being drawn into the world of the Quran that's connected to the world that we live in right now. And I really love that about the whole collection. It really draws me closer to Allah in ways that I would have to say are extremely profound. And it makes me question my own assumptions about the world. It makes me question my place and my position to the world around me. And I think that's really the best result of any interaction with the Quran that we can get. One where we are left with a profound sense of our relationship to Allah and the relationship to the world around us. And so, as a matter of reading the Quran in this month, it's this whole process is the one that of course, I use myself. People are free to, of course, criticize me and say that there is another way, there's better ways of doing things. I'd love to hear from you if you've got another method that you like to use. But I just wanted to share with you, kind of my process a little bit in the hope that, it's something of benefit for all of us, inshallah. So that's it for this time. Inshallah, I hope to record another episode soon. Hopefully taking on probably a completely different topic. So I haven't chosen one yet, but as soon as I do, you'll be the next to know. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Stay tuned to Islam 21C to catch the front row for the online masjid.